department. And they've been on hiatus for obvious reasons. And we're looking forward to launching these things again. And we're really happy to launch the Ulam Colloquium again today. So for those who don't know, Stanislaw Ulam was a remarkable mathematician. He was a very famous theorem in topology around him, but then also he worked at Los Alamos, for example. Just a prolific and exceptionally gifted mathematician, and he was on the faculty here for 10 years, 1974 to 1984. So this colloquium is launched in his honor with a focus on more applied mathematics. So today we are pleased to welcome Jinchao Xu from Penn State University. Professor Xu is the Vern Woolman Professor of Mathematics and Director of the Center for Computational Mathematics and Applications at Penn State. His main research interests are in the design, analysis, and application of numerical methods, especially multi-level and adaptive finite element methods for systems of PDEs and problems with direct applications to science and engineering. His other research interests include the mathematical analysis, modeling, and applications of deep neural networks. He was an invited speaker at the International Congress for Industrial and Applied Mathematics in 2007, as well as at the International Congress for Mathematicians in 2010. He's a fellow of the Society for Industrial and Applied Math, the American Mathematical Society, and the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And today, he's going to provide us with a mathematical understanding of deep learning. So please welcome Jinchao Xu.
So I just want to figure out 10 to page. So how many 10 to page?
Just page down.
This one? Good afternoon, everybody. And, I'm really delighted and happy to be here. And thanks to Kevin and sorry to have me here. And, beautiful warm weather here. I heard a lot about this university, and see many friends and colleagues. See George here, and say he's been my mentor and say all these years. So Bill, yeah, from Penn State. I think the replay is online. Read Scott also today. It's really so happy to be here. Thanks again for the opportunity for me to give a talk here. And today I'm going to talk about deep learning, and I have this brave title called Mathematical Understanding. And oh, no, sorry. So I just give a little bit some introduction about the deep learning for those of you in the audience who know, I'm sure many of you know more deep learning than I do, but I'm going to talk about deep learning from my understanding of it through maybe rather narrow perspective. But to begin with, when we actually talk about research, it's been often said, okay, we do theory, next maybe experiment, computation. This is what I do, simulation. This is something we call the data science, computational, theoretical, experimental computation, and data science. Today, I'm going to talk about data science. And one big success story of data science is deep learning. And maybe you can, in general, you can call it artificial intelligence based on deep learning. And one big question that I've been asked, and is deep learning really a science? George, did you ask that question before? And it's a good question. This has been said in some literature that deep learning is accurate. But anyway, it's just not a very big success. But it's fair to say at least the mathematical understanding is limited. And today I'm going to just talk some mathematical understanding. Certainly, it's just lots of open problem questions. And I try to understand, like most of us, when you get into a new field, you kind of use what you know. I know the best doing numerical method for partial differential equation, like finite element method, multi-grid method. I'm actually going to relate some of the major techniques in deep learning with these two techniques I have been working on for last 30 some odd years. And I'm going to just begin with something. What is intelligence? I just go to Google, okay? It's a silly question. What is intelligence? And the ability to learn, understand, or judge. You may not agree with me, but this is some of the web pages said that. And they will have a brain, right? Some intelligence will have a brain to have intelligence. And then you have a sort of natural brain, like our human brain. Artificial brain is designed and made by human beings. It's not created by God. It's human created. Artificial intelligence is, some people call it machine intelligence. It's just somehow created by algorithm and computer programming. And so let's say in our daily life, with some intelligent or not so intelligent, you have to make a decision. This is what we do every day. Thanks for deciding to come to the talk. Yes. And now the thing is that yes or no. Mathematically, this is a heaviside function. If we call it activation function, you have some threshold. If it's bigger than one, the topic is interesting enough. Okay, you come to the talk. Otherwise, no. So this is kind of activation functions, and so I'm going to give you examples. All right, so make a decisions. Suppose I want to hire staff. You should hire more staff here, apparently. But what criteria do you use? Maybe enough years of experience. Well, this is a very simplistic, naive kind of example. This is my only criteria. So maybe 3 years, I hire. If you don't have less than 3, I don't hire. So mathematics, this is the simplest neural network, okay? So you have a linear function. So this is activation function. This is the kind of what we call a neural network with one neuron and one layer, one hidden layer. So that's the. Suppose you have more than one factor. Let's say experience and education. Now, well, it depends on where you come from. So you have to make a judgment. Is education is more important, or the experience is more important? I suppose that most of us have got high degrees, so maybe let's put some more weight here. So you put in this case, I put the more weight. For example, you have to put a weight. You have 2 factors. You take the linear combination. So I say I put number 2 weight into the education and the experiences, and then you have certain. You somehow use this as a score of your candidate. So then you decide whether you're going to hire or not. Let me just give you some kind of example. Say, suppose you have the first candidate have 3 years experience of kind of PhD degree, you get a score 6. Right? And sometimes more education in this model seems to be preferred. But if you have a master's degree, only get a 1 year experience, higher based on this model. So they are now the question. So these are you have this neural network with two input data. I'm talking about neural network right now. This is a neural network. And suppose you also not only you decide to hire this person, I'm going to also give a salary. All right. And so in this case, I'm going to introduce this another activation function. It's called a riddle. Funny name is rectified linear unit. So this function is the most commonly used activation function in nowadays AI applications. And I was told it's first invented and used by neuroscience. Okay, but the thing is mathematically less than 0 equal to 0, less greater than 0 is x, piecewise linear function. So this is more refined decisions in this case. So I'm going to do a salary, for example, pretty much the previous model. I changed this riddle activation function multiplied by 2,000. It's a monthly salary. And so in this case, not only you decide if you hire the person, you also give a recommended salary. And anyway, use the example before. And if you don't hire the person, I guess it's just a salary. But the thing is that, so this will be the riddle activation function for this. You're making the decision of what person to hire, what salary to give. But the thing is that this, mathematically, if you do the AI machine learning talk, all the computer scientists, they love to have all these charts. It took me a while to get used to it, so I kind of spent. You got the idea, right? This is the input, and then you took this linear function, take the activation function, and do that. So now suppose you have more, that's too simple. So then you may have more factors, right? Yes, in this case, I put maybe a working experience, maybe managing experience. A degree, okay, PhD, master, maybe you have a university ranking, I don't know. GPA, college. So you do that. So in this case, this will be the experience. Or for I don't know, when you have to on my head here, so you make a decision, I don't know, in your brain, you have some kind of parameters. Probably here I just want to experience depend on this thing, but this thing maybe also connected with that. Mathematically, you have this connections here. But in the other one is education, so it's certainly connected to other three factors. So in this case, you have the input, but you also have a neural network to get the experience. Then you have this the input, then you have this what I call X1 here experience. You have this weights here. But in the already decision process, you may not take this into account. You put a 0 here. Maybe the network trained later, maybe you get some maybe non-zero factors here. And so based on this line, you put this together. So this is what I call like 2 layers of neural network. And you have the input factor, then you combine these things, so you have this experience and education. From there, you get another neural network. You even hire the person with salary. So I think for human being, you certainly, I don't know how, when you decide to do something, there are some factors here. You make a decision. Maybe a human being very intelligent, even though probably some of the computer science really believe that's one of our brain functions, but you just do very quick calculation, and somehow you have some weights sitting there. But so this is really the deep neural network, what I call deep neural, deep of layers. If the number of layers getting more and more, it's getting deeper and deeper. I think the picture should go upside down. You can go dense. It's going to, you call the more layers, the deeper the network is. So the broad picture like this. When you have the computer science talk that you have the input on different layers, I'll come back later. I think I have read about the literature. The human beings layers always kind of multi-layers, different kind of cells. But I'll come back for a moment. So as I said, that if you take the simple example, you somehow, if you think education is more important than experiences, so you put more weight there. But but the machine brain says that we build about data. Okay. Our brain also, from the past experience, you hire people, you kind of have judgment. And but when in terms of mathematical machine learning, how do we decide these things? This is the deal. Is that suppose you take the simplistic model as so in a department head maybe for 10 years, so then you hire this many people, maybe staff. So then you have to. So right now, I do backward. I'm going to evaluate the performance of the people I hire to get a bad fair, good, very good, excellent. This is like give the grade or the score to the people you hire, right? So now you use some ways before. Now I pretend I don't know that. Okay, in that case, I'm going to say. You have the input, you know. You also know the performance which you evaluate. That's what we call a label of the data. So then you go backwards. I'm going to find those weights. So that this model, the outcome will match the actual performance which you evaluate. All right. And so in this case, you can do least square kind of matches. And actually, in the statistical learning, maybe you can use soft marks, cross entropy, and cross entropy or sort of thing. I'll come back to that later. But you can simplistically say that I'm going to try to match the data as much as I can. Then you go backward to decide. So you minimize this what we call loss function. Okay, so you find the weight. So you find the global minimum. So because you want to have your decision process match the outcome evaluation the best you can. So that's what the machine learning is job, and it's purely by data. And so next time, so my parameter, I choose W2 equal 2, and one maybe my model predicted based on all the hiring experience, maybe give you a different answer. In this case, when you have the next candidate coming in, that's the input data. What are equal to, and if it's actually excellent, you may hire it. Okay, so this is the how. Now the question is that one of the big problems is that is to how do you actually find the minimizer of that one? And you do the minimization problem. This is called a loss function. This is a big deal. It's called a how do you actually find the minimization of the, when everybody teach a calculus, we will all know how to find the, minimize using gradient, all those things. But it turns out for high dimensional problems, finding the minimizer is highly, highly long trivial. And for convex problem, you can do that. For non-convex problem, and it's very difficult. It's like well, for this audience, of course, we know that one of the most naive, the basic things you want to do is that suppose you want to, this is pretty much the landscape of my loss function of mountain. Actually, if you go to deep learning model, you are more complicated than this. So you have to get to the very bottom of the mountain. And this is the impossible problem, I tell you. You have the way to the most commonly used training algorithm is actually this naive method. So this you just follow the gradient descent direction. You sit here, you look for the direction that go down the fastest, well, from multivariable calculus space. Negative gradient direction goes down fast. This is kind of a local optimization actually. So this eta t is kind of the step. In machine learning language, it's called linear rate. Okay. But anyway, I don't have time to talk about this. Is the extremely important aspect of machine learning. How do you actually solve this optimization problem, what they call training algorithm. So again, I just want to say that it's very interesting that because I don't want to get too much about this. When I had to look at this literature about how this human brain's cell function, you can put these things together. There's actually pretty much a one-to-one correspondence. And I think in this history of the machine learning, they actually motivated of this machine learning kind of model, this activation function, all this linear, all these things here. And basically, when I see somebody, you have a take a linear operation of that, then you take some activation, make some decision with one layer, then you put it in the second layer, then you do the linear combination, you make an activation for the next layer. We have lots of layers of cells in our brain. And there's a correlation. Historically, it was actually motivated like that. It's quite actually amazing. So different way of learning. Okay, I'm going to. So one of the things when I was talking to my friend, talking about whether data science is a science or not, and I like to use the following example. And my native language is Chinese, but I studied English. So I don't know if you've thought about, we have 4 different ways of doing research, right? Theory, experiment, computation, and data. And when you study the language, which method do you use? I studied English. I first began with grammar. I learned another theory. I used theoretical approach to study a native language. I don't know, foreign language. Native language, my mother, I don't think. We don't teach our kids grammar when first born. And it doesn't imitate data. This is all imitation. And it's pure data. So you better believe that my native language is certainly better than foreign language. So wow. And so then, but the things that of course, so the later I said that you need a lot of data, you need a lot of practice. You cannot just say overnight I can teach your 1-year kid speak all kinds of things. But if you go to foreign language, you could manage to say a few words in a couple of weeks. In this case, because you have theory, and you can say things, you don't need a lot of data. But of course, in order to really get it a more effective way, is that what I call you cannot just pure by data. Now, if you go to 6 years, you go to maybe you go to decade, you go to study those like linguistic theory or maybe grammar, syntax, or that thing. And so for foreign language, we not only have to study the theory in class, you have to go talk, practice outside of the classroom. But if you really go to this, because this is a huge business right now, and the machine learning, scientific, this is what they call the science for AI, or this maybe have AI for science, and there's lots of work on these things. And you can, in the old days, we do theory, or what I call logic. And computational science is also built on model physical law, right? But if you do experimental science, then you have data, you do that, but the experiment is also guided by theory. But if you do data science, you should also be guided by theory, right? If there's whatever you have, you should have it. So most of the machine learning model these days is all purely by data. But if you know some physical law, some law, what I call, I couldn't find a good word for it. I say logic, maybe a theory, maybe some convention, whatever you know. And so I say call it a logic-based kind of. So whatever logic or theory you have, you should make use of. You kind of enhance the data. Or the other way around, you have the data-based model, you also enhance by the theory. You should complementary to each other. This is what I call the maybe logical kind of based machine learning. And one of a good example, pretty successful, is called physics-informed neural network, called PIN. And many of my engineering colleagues are using that. Basically, when you do some physics problem, you use the data, but also you should use the physics. computer scientists doing the AI things, mostly at least dominantly still the pure data approaches. So that's my quick introduction of what is that. Any question?
When you say physics-based informed neural networks, are you saying that you're using natural laws to somehow constrain solutions?
That's right. For example, there's some you can solve nowadays solve fluid mechanics. You actually take the photos of the things. Somehow you are missing velocity or pressure or that. So that's pure by data. But then there's also something like this called nowadays surface equation. Somehow you put these two things together. You use physical law. I think that's the way to go in the future. And again, I'm come back to some mathematics here. So again, you do the classification. I actually said the performance is also classification. Your employee, you classify them into 5 classes. Here, image recognition is also a classification problem. You see there's 3 species, you classify them into 3 things. But we all know what they are, but the things on the machines, what do you do? So if you think about this, one of this photo is like 3 million pixels, for example. So the question is that how do you represent it in a computer? Is right now you can just take every pixel point is a value. Let's forget about the color for a moment. Suppose I have 3 million pixels. So that will be a point in a Euclidean space of 3 million dimensions. So now we are living in 3-dimensional world. You can imagine 3 million dimensions. The high dimensional is the keyword in machine learning. So think about that. Now you place this, every point is there is either a cat or a dog. Now you have to believe this is a phase, at least in the very beginning. You have to believe that by certain metric, the dog should stay with the dog in one place. And the cat should be, but I use the word the metric. For example, if you take a photocopy of me, the metric, Euclidean metric doesn't want to do the job. If I shift to the left, if I take the Euclidean distance for the 2 images, they're going to be very big. I'm still the same guy. So, so you should take things like this into account. But so machine learning is really mathematically very simple. What should I do? I find a functional class of 3-dimensional variable. That's 3 million dimensional, 3 million variables. It's a huge function class. And I do you have to identify the functional class. But this time I'm going to say I have a function depends on parameters. So when you say a cat, I divided this. This is a vector in 3 million Euclidean space. Let's call 1, 0, 0. This is what kind of probability distribution of this cat. I saw as a probability 1. This is like a cat, but the next one would be a dog, then a rabbit. Of course, you don't have to be 1. I don't know. When I walk in my neighbor, sometimes I cannot really tell it's a dog and a cat to walk in. 70% of the chance is a dog. It is actually for random variable used for this label. But anyway, that's for this language. Next time, so if you this basically you have a function class. So you do the data filter. You fit the functions at this value. The next time you have to come to me an image. So I put that one in there. Suppose that this is what I got. So then I say, okay, I got 70% of chance this is a cat. So that's what they call the test icon. You do the test. So you try, somehow, of course, in order to do this, you have to do the data feeding. You maybe do least square. You do the optimization algorithm, do all that stuff. Then you do this. It makes sense? In this case, it would be. And anyway, so you do the training, then you have to test, and then that involves all kinds of. Now there's a different question. Now the question: what will the f look like? What is the function look like? How do you train? today I'm going to talk a little bit about what is the functional class we can use. So now I'm going to do a little bit. Okay, how should I watch my time? When did we start?
You got about 20 minutes.
Huh?
You got at least 20 minutes.
Okay. So when you see you know, in high dimensional spaces, something we call a linear separable, you can put a hyperplane in the middle. This, when you actually do the statistical course, this is a binary classification. So you put a plane in the middle. If the greater than 0 is one class, the another one is zero. So they are associated with these things. Is something called a logistic regression. Logistic regression is a very basic statistical linear model. It's a linear model. And in the linear, but I don't get details there. But one of the important things that you need to put, this is like this loss function, which in this case is really not the least square we do is associated with cross entropy. And here you do the regularization. Regularization is very important in machine learning. And in this particular case, in this particular case, if you do the regularization parameter goes to, you know, you put a certain regularization, what I would call improve the generalization accuracy. And you put, suppose you have two different kind of data like that. You can just say, I just put a hyperplane in between. You could have infinite possibilities. So what is the best one? Huh? And so it's not the, not to say that you put it in the middle, okay. So and the next time if you have something data sitting here somewhere, and but interestingly, mathematically you can prove that if you take the lambda goes to 0, this logistic regression actually goes to something called a support vector machine. Support vector machine is one of the most studied machine learning model in statistics. And anyway, so the support vector machine, of course, they also depend on CAD or other things. And what I want to say is that the logistic regression like that is the very basic starting places of machine learning. So now if you go to now in practice, if you get there's a cat and a dog or rabbit, I can tell you that they are not linear separate by a long shot. And you cannot put a hyperplane between these three guys in the 3 million dimensions. But it turns out you can actually find a long linear map. You put a long linear map so that you can map this 3 set into a new set of data. Those mapped data sets are linearly separate. That makes sense? So if you do that, so now for example, you have this way is not linearly separable. It's very naive. If you do that, it becomes linearly separate. So the whole idea in the machine learning is to find this long linear function. You're going to assume this is, you have to believe it, okay? You have to assume this is separable. So then there must be a long linear function that so that makes them long linear. This is what we call feature extractions. And the popular choice of the, so if you believe that there are some what called decision boundary or whatever, you separate the set. So it's kind of a complex kind of high dimensional function. Now the question that you have to use some kind of more computable function to approximate this guy. So what do you choose? Polynomial is our old friend. Okay, you can always approximate anything by polynomials. We call it Weierstrass theorem. But you can polynomial, and then also then you have the kernel function. The kernel function you can choose the in SVM. You can implicitly assume this. There's a long linear functions hidden there, which is called instruction function for the models. But these are the, of course, all very popular. For the right now, we basically use this deep neural network as a function class to do this feature extraction. Mathematically, it's very simple, right? You just take this very. Now the question why you have a function class like this will be more it's more useful than the kind of function class we know. I'm going to try to to explain this a little bit. But the so-called model capacity is that the reason this function class are important is that you should reasonably you should be able to approximate any nonlinear function or the continuous function. You know, of course, we know the Weierstrass approximation. You know, say any continuous function in a compact set can be approximated by the polynomials. But then you also have this so the universal kernel. You know, you have a theorem of the same kind. So I'm going to hear for those of you have not seen this before. I'm paying €1 on it. This is one of the things that got me interested in these things. And I want you to pay attention for those of you who have not seen it before. So this W sigma is a fixed, we call it activation function. All right. You take the A and the W be the arbitrary. Given any continuous function, under what condition on sigma? So this will be rich enough to approximate anything. And I'm going to give the answer to you in a moment. So think about it right now. But the answer is actually quite interesting. And so the oldest picture I showed you before in this decision making things that you're starting from some linear model, you get some score, then you do some action. It's called activation function. So you take some actions, and then that's the first layer. The second layer, then you can do the linear again. You take the activation again. You go like that. You keep going. You keep going, and this is what is called deep neural network. And one of the most commonly used deep neural network is a ReLU. It's a piecewise linear. So what is the ReLU? I think it's not. It's fair to say that it is the most commonly used activation function in the so-called AI world these days. But one of the interesting things about the piecewise, this thing that if you think about it, no matter how many composition you do, it's a composition of a piecewise linear with a piecewise linear. If a composition of two piecewise linear function is still piecewise linear. And the boundary of the hyperplane. Can you convince yourself? And so it's a piecewise, it's continuous. Now, one of the things that I have done this for all these years is that you put a tetrahedron or triangle, you put a piecewise linear, you give the mesh first, then you define the piecewise linear. This is called finite element. In 2D, the triangles, in 3D is tetrahedron, in 1D is interval. So you can convince yourself very easily, you can sub-triangulate this. This is the finite element function. A ReLU DNA, it is piecewise linear, and hence it's a finite element function. Now the question is that it's the other way around is true or not. If you give any arbitrary grid, I put a piecewise linear, can you write this as a deep neural net? What do you think? The answer is yes. They are actually, these two things are really the same. And first of all, this is a piecewise linear you can see, but this one you can also do. Any finite element function can be written as a deep neural net. Haha, then I said, okay, I know this for ages, so I should do something about it. But this is one of the reasons I worked on this. I did the first project I worked. The most popular ReLU deep neural network, it is as a function class. It is the finite element.
Is this with one layer, two layers?
Multi-layer, good question. And the layer should be sufficiently more in order to recover any finite element. Good question. Well, we know the one layer you cannot do. In 2D, 3D, 2 layers is sufficient. And I spent a lot of time on these things. But, so another question that I come back to the approximation problem. For that, you can give me confidence that I know finite element can approximate a lot. Piecewise polynomial can really have good approximation property. Now, then what are we going to do with this approximation here? And for example, you take a shallow neural network. All right, you have linear function activation. Now the question that I asked you the question a little bit earlier. For what sigma, this the nonlinear combination of these things can approximate anything, any continuous function on compact set. So so you think about what is our favorite function? The first thing, at least for us, you begin with constant function, linear function, maybe polynomials. But when the name of the game is the sigma is fixed. Once you're fixed, you cannot change. So now the question is that if sigma, what if sigma is a polynomial? It's a fixed polynomial. The answer is yes or no. This is a young face, a graduate student. You say yes? So once sigma is a polynomial degree of 5, it's one variable. Okay. If it's one variable, but this is a linear function of a multivariable. This is a polynomial degree of 5. In terms of degree of the multivariable, what would be the degree? You cannot be more than 5. So sorry. I have the answer the first time myself. So the answer is no. Now the question is that variables are, what about the function? This, if you have not seen it before, you may not have guessed it, but I can tell you the answer. As long as sigma is not a polynomial, any other function will do the job. And for those of you who are interested, I can give a proof here after the lectures. 5 minutes is enough for that. So it's very interesting, the neural network these days is quite interesting. And this certainly surprised me. I spent quite a bit of time studying this. I did not prove that theorem. It's hidden in the literature. At least I have the, oh, sorry, I don't have the literature.
What regularity makes all?
Oh, what is sigma? Oh, it's a good point. Sorry, it has to be a function somehow. And the real precise statement is the Riemann integrable. Well, and yeah, Riemann is almost everybody continues that. So you might think that the computer science library loop, in terms of approximation, anything can do it except the polynomials. Well, if you're talking about machine learning people, they always say the nonlinearity is the key. Nonlinearity, they always say the high dimensional things, when you're talking about it, you have to bring some nonlinear features. I have to put a little more footnote here. It's a long polynomial nonlinearity. Long polynomial is also nonlinear varieties.
Can you, I know it's maybe complicated, but can you give us some intuitive idea of why that's so? Because any function can itself be approximated by a high.
No, the polynomial is fixed. This case, very good point. I actually, this is important. You are right. It's kind of a contradictory from what I said earlier. Well, Strauss theorem says that the name of the game is introduce the degree of the polynomial and also choose the coefficients appropriately. You can approximate anything. Here, my sigma is fixed. Real, for example, is fixed. The fixed order polynomial x5 is fixed. Then you let the other things do the job. AIW, DI will do the job. Those things make the function class rich. If it's not a polynomial, you can produce a lot of stuff. If it's a polynomial, there's not much you can produce. It's always polynomial. That's a very critical question. So now the things that I'm doing approximation, finite difference for all these things, but somehow if you do some error analysis of these things, it's just a different game. Something called a sampling argument. Okay, I'll show you the sampling argument here. And I wanted to do a little bit, I could have done this approximation thing, but I decided to do this one here. So I'm going to take a cosine neural network. Okay, take cosine neural network. And now the question, how do you prove this one will converge? I even give you some estimate. Okay. So I'm going to have a full proof here. So the things that I do Fourier transformation. Just forgive me about this. The coefficients, maybe it's okay. But you do this. This is Fourier transformation emergent formula. Okay. So take it. Suppose this is, I'm talking about the real functions. Okay. So I take the real part is the same. So if you write this, so you write this, you take the, you write the U as the amplitude and with some angles, exponential, you write the things here. Okay, this is identity, okay? You do the things here. So please take a look at this identity. Take the real part of this, and I didn't do anything. Okay, just write this one here, put the cosine with the exponential to take the real part. Okay? And that's half of the proof. But anyway, you introduce the probability density. This is your height divided by L1 norm of your height. This integral is equal to 1 on the whole space. That's the density function. All right. So this is what for those of you who have studied this is kind of what we call expectation. Right? Expectation. So when you do expectation, you do sampling. Okay. And you sample this. The whole idea is that you do the sampling, then it's 1 over n. You take this thing here. That is already, if you believe that the sampling will approximate your expectation, then I ended my proof. So you get it. Okay, let me get it more precise because the sampling, I don't know. I'm going to give a very precise. This is a totally rigorous, complete proof. And, so I take this the expectation, right? I'm called this. So I'm going to call this V. I'm going to have to choose some omega I have good approximation. So the way to do this is the following. There's a magic identity, one trivial identity in statistics. I think in probability, this is probably one of the most important identity. The way to do it is you do the expectation, right? Which I have here. You do the E of n. You have an omega 1 and omega 2 and omega n. You consider the n independent variables. You do an n tuple integral. That's my En with density function multiplied for getting different variables. Then you get this identity. You just have to calculate. If you want to study statistics, you have to calculate this. And then the proof is pretty much finished because this G is a cosine. Cosine is less than 1. The total integral is probability density. It's 1 over n. Now you have an integral of n variable integration. I'm also taking the L2 in the thing in here. So this is a function of omega I is an integration. There's at least one point. If you the integration of the whole thing is less than 1 over n, at least there's a point which is less than. If every other point is greater than into the universe, this inequality cannot be correct. So that's the end of the proof. And it's a sampling argument, which you have to say, well, you take a function. In this case, you need certain regularity of u. In this case, your height should be L1, and then you get the n to the negative half power. This is something that's important here. Usually, you have this exponent does not depend on the dimension. This is one of the big deals in machine learning because neural network function somehow has no curse of dimensionality. This is a yes or no. But this is it's like the Monte Carlo method when you have this equal n to the negative half. So one of the things that the message we got here is that you have this let's say equal this coefficient is kind of bounded, and because of in the previous page, but the sampling argument. But if you actually put this in the coefficient, the bounded coefficient, and so from here, the question we ask is that this is a big question, and we're talking about some little bit deeper mathematics here. It's the following that you take any other this is for cosine is very special. We don't use it very much. Suppose I give you a ReLU or other things. What kind of functional class? You need certain regularity. If your function is non-smooth, you cannot have machine-dependent approximation. You have to have some regularity. In this case, we have identified the kind of the optimal, the weakest function class. This one is true. So basically, you take this. You can think about this like the unit, the convex hull of this possibility. you know, this, you restricted this omega gen bj in some kind of set, and given that set, then you constrain the activity. This is motivated by the sampling organ we did earlier, and then I can introduce these things as the unit ball of a Banach space. I'm going to introduce here. It's called you take this what kind of a K1B norm such that for the minimum R such that F is the BRD. BRD is like the unit of the ball radius R. And this is a Banach space we prove, and there's many other paper has I forgot to have more. There's quite a few papers in the literature and about this space, but it turns out we have proved the equivalent. And any question? Cool. And I just want to show that there's an approximation theorem paper that if a function in this L2 function can be approximated by neural network at all right, with a bounded coefficient, if and only if this is in this molecular variation space is the largest function class that can be approximated neural network. Not only that, and you can also prove that the rate of conversion into the negative part. And so this is very kind of satisfying result. But this is a very generic things. But now if you do the ReLU and maybe ReLU to the K, and in this case we have proved that if you take the ReLU to the K, you can actually gain a little bit. Again, we're talking about the function class is the largest function class you can approximate, if and only if. But what is the rate of convergence? And in this case, you can get, for this case, you can get even higher order. That's the kind of most general one. Some people call it universal approximation theorem. That here we can pick up this 2k plus 1 over 2d. It's a little bit more technical here, but the sense I'm trying to explain this to you, this has been very well studied in the literature, in the approximation theorem, in the statistical literature, all that. And this estimate, they have special cases being studied by lots of leading mathematicians in this business. We are very happy to fill in all the gaps. We prove all the cases. And we also prove this lower bound is actually optimal. It goes both ways. So it really tells you that this ReLU and is a wonderful activation function. But if you actually remove this stability and condition, we can actually do better. And I just want to say that in the compare, did I tell you? I told you before that finite ReLU neural network is actually as a function class is the same as a finite element, but they are remarkably different in structure. Finite element, if you have n degree of freedom, you get we call it V of n. Now finite element neural network, you have n degree of freedom. I call it Vn. The rate of convergence is the power of D better than the finite element. I'm a finite element guy. I don't want to tell you this result because if D is a 10, you have, if this is 10 to the minus 2, this is 10 to the minus 20. Well, I don't know. The coefficients they can be very big, but the thing is that at least the neural network does have extraordinary potential. Same functional class, different structure. The way to generate so I'm running out of time, but one of the things I just wanted to tell you that another thing that's my specialty in my business is a finite element method and multivariate. One of the things I'm going to tell you is that one of the important things in the multivariate is a method of solving the algebraic system equation for solving the finite element equation from the discretization of partial differential equations. And without the red one, okay, is my multivariate method, which I worked for more than 30 years. So I put this red one become neural network. So it becomes convolutional neural network. That's the major. The reason we have the AI today is the success of convolutional neural network. And so it turns out that we found that the multigrid method with a small variation, you get the neural network. And there's a convolutional neural network, especially is one of the big success stories is ResNet, the Canyon curve. And we actually can see the connection between the two, but we actually turns out our the neural network is actually slightly better. And of course, there's big people around the corner at the neural network, and one of the big things in 2012 in Hinton's group, and but these are the things, of course, their convolution is given by, and experience. I don't know all the insight they have, but from what we do, we derive the things from multiple methods, and it's kind of seems to have more structures. I have to say I seem to have a good feeling about this method. But anyway, this method performs quite well. I just want to, because my time is running out, and what convolutional neural network is for the image classification. Okay, I told you for this rapid all this thing with high accuracy. And what happens, for example, autonomous driving, for example. So I was talking to Bill. Bill is a big fan of Tesla. He said, "I support Tesla." So I just support myself on Tesla. But how Tesla is amazingly good on the road. You can really let the hands off very big traffic. You have to put some faith in it. So what they do is, I just always simplify what the Tesla do. They have 8 cameras. Tesla have 8 cameras. So have 80 images. Any moment has 80 images. You have these are classification problems. So well, it's not that simple, but you basically what is 5 different modes. You just keep as the way you do it, or you accelerate, you slow down, you make a right turn, or this is the left. Just make a right. 5 classes. You basically make 5 classifications. So you have the image, the use of CNN. Of course, they use reinforcement and all the other technique, but the fundamental idea is not more than classification using CNN. But anyway, the more recent one is that you have the AlphaFold. Now you can use the right program for you. For the programmers, you have the right code, but now you probably just get AI the right code for you. But anyway, hopefully in this talk I said do some mathematics. I think from the mathematical, I think there's some way you can understand, especially the connection with the numerical method of finite element multigrid. We have some theoretical insight of this thing. And I'm actually hoping for at the end of the day that, okay, you mathematician can say these things, but can you do better than me? I thought I could, but I worked on this for 2 years. And now I do a slightly better. It's not a significant better. But I am still quite confident. I've done several times before, but this time for other things. I think with the mathematical insight, you can do things. But you can do, for example, you change the model, and also you do the training algorithm. One of the bigger things I want to mention that in this business is that you use the machine learning to solve partial differential equations and all that. It's a very popular field. Anyway, this is some of the papers actually related to this talk. I have some plot in my talk. Give some acknowledgement here. But I've actually, well, you just about popular literature here. For example, this field about certain prices. You have a paper in Nature. This is like 600 or 700 pages. I'm recently finished a lecture notes. I talk about deep learning from mathematical use. And anyway, thank you for this, and sorry for the overtime. I'm not a bunch of overtime.
One of the slides you mentioned in the result with Siegel about this BS norm, and you mentioned that the results for Siegel norm have been less than. Can you elaborate more on this?
Yeah, actually, that result we had this best. Oh, sorry. That one. So we are able to improve this estimate with the balance space with s equal to half. The best result I had before the s equal to 1. We were able to prove that. We go to this result you're talking about. I think this one I had before is s equal to 1. We managed to get an s equal to half. Because of that, we are able to prove, for example, deep neural network seems to be better than the sparse grid. I don't know if any of you do the sparse grid. Yeah, this is quite an improvement.
Just s equals 1 half, and s equals 1 is no other s.
Oh, this actually is very big. When you think about the rate, it's so much higher. This is a loss of like this is too extreme. This is like you get the into the negative half, which is already very good. But this is depends on the dimension. If you actually really have very, very high regularity, your solution is kind of bounded by any high order kind of variance space. You get a really dimension independent result into the negative k plus 1 is like a polynomial approximation. It's remarkable. I'm showing this to my finite element group. Nobody would believe this. We have finite element cycles here. It's a very mysterious result. And it is really, truly remarkable. But whether you can mathematically achieve that, that is not obvious. We don't know how to do it. Yeah.
This theorem is the family of activations is fixed or not?
Activation is fixed.
And it's true for any which is not polynomial.
This is activation function reduce the power of k. I like that because it gives us polynomials. Finite element gives us polynomials. And the redo is gives us linear, which again very common use.
So let's think Jinchao again.
Always have 4 minute slides.
It's a common problem. Everybody does it.
Yeah. I have 5 more minutes actually.